Have you ever heard of the term hikikomori? With it becoming more and more of a prominent issue in Japan, more and more publicity is being given to this issue. The term has been briefly mentioned in news sites such as BBC and The Washington Post, and within some popular young adult novels like the book Ready Player One. With this in mind, let's start off by asking the obvious. What is a hikikomori? Well, the word hikikomori in Japanese literally means pulling inward or being confined. But in context to a person, it refers to a social recluse. While I had trouble finding an exact definition for hikikomori, I would consider them as someone who has rarely, if at all, left their house in a period of 6 months. Studies show how this condition is usually caused by a major psychological occurrence in a teenager's life, such as bullying or unexpected loss of a loved one. Individual psychopathology, as Tamaki Saito, the man who coined the term hikikomori, was considered as a primary cause by the Japanese Ministry of Health and Welfare. In his study, he used a 125 size sample to determine that most hikikomori suffer from some sort of mental disorder, but there was not one specific disorder they shared in common, hence individual psychopathology. When you are a hikikomori, you will not leave your room, so most of them end up spending their lives on various indoor activities which are, but not limited to, binge watching television shows, building models, browsing the internet, playing video games, listening to music, and sometimes just sleeping. They also have a tendency to indulge in addictive substances, like cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, and many others. Over 1 million people suffer from this condition, about 1% of the Japanese population. And possibly even more, because families prefer not to talk about this kind of thing in fear of bringing shame to their families. What I'm saying may lead you to believe that hikikomori is a condition specific only to Japan, but there is some evidence showing otherwise. According to a study done named Hikikomori Syndrome of Social Withdrawal Exists Outside Japan, a preliminary international investigation. Hikikomori is a condition that could exist elsewhere too. While we don't know if it's the same thing as housebound syndrome or agoraphobia, we can say for certain that there is reason to believe that it exists elsewhere and needs more research done into it. I would also like to briefly mention that my research, frankly, might be somewhat inaccurate. I cannot read Japanese. Why is that an issue? Because most studies on hikikomori are done and published in Japan. It can take years before a study is finally published in English on the subject. Because of this, research could already be available going more in depth about some of the things I talked about in this video, and I would be completely oblivious to it. But I digress. All in all, hikikomori is somewhat that of an enigma. To this day, extensive research is done on the subject, with huge studies being published every year. The only thing I can certainly say about hikikomori is that hikikomori will be heavily researched in the future. There is so much more to be learned on this issue, and I hope you are as eagerly waiting as myself for new things to be discovered on this mysterious condition.